Well, welcome to a new episode of Discernment Now. My name is Rich Van Every, and this is Kevin Anthony next to me, and we're so excited to be back after a little bit of a hiatus. But man, do we have a plethora of stories coming in hot from the airwaves that are never-ending, just sagas of epic proportions. So what do you got for us this week, Kev? I mean,
first let's just say we're not doing episodes because there wasn't anything to talk about. There was a ton of stuff to talk about. We're not going to go back to anything that happened in the past. We're going to stay current. But, life is life, and we had to take a little break. But we are working on some ways to continue to bring you this kind of content in a way that works a little bit easier for us.
Yeah. So, and just to reframe, our intention here is to help decipher what we're hearing and trying to determine a little bit more what is most likely true and what is most likely not true, and to just exercise those critical thinking skills that we were all born with and most of us were taught out of through the Western education system.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into the first story. So, a trove of documents has been released showing that the U.S. and U.K. military contractors were engaged in censoring information on the internet.
Oh, say it's not true.
Oh, it is true. And so, as Rich was just saying, one of the major points of this show is to help you discern what's real and what's not. And when you have been told over and over and over and over again that there's no censorship happening, we have to expose that when things like this come out. So there are documents that show that the government was using contractors to censor information. Why were they using contractors? Because the government themselves couldn't legally do the censorship. So they outsourced it, which is 100% illegal. The government is not allowed to outsource to private contractors things that it does not have the power itself to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is just, one of those interesting ones, where, wow, didn't they pull a little magic trick on us? And we have seen around the veil, and still don't hold your breath for any real justice or accountability to happen. Although we're going to bank on the fact that this information getting out is waking up a certain percentage of people, giving them at least more insight and credibility to how things are happening. And hopefully through the act of God, things will change someday.
Just remember, the next time they tell you that censorship isn't happening, well, remember they told us that Twitter wasn't censoring either. And then the Twitter files came out after Elon Musk took over, and we got all the hardcore evidence proving that they were not only massively censoring, but they were doing so at the request of the Biden administration.
Yes.
So this is just another piece of information that you can use when debating somebody who tells you censorship isn't a thing, because it really is.
Yeah. And if you want to know more about this story, just look up Sons of Liberty. They wrote up a great article on it. And we're happy to plug them.
All right, next story. There are yet more documents showing that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden were running an influence peddling scheme and taking money from foreign governments. Literally over the holiday, which just passed not too long ago, I was at a gathering where a casual acquaintance of mine told me that there was absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden did anything wrong. That every time the Republicans said they had something, it turned out to be nothing. And I honestly had to shake my head and go, I don't know what reality he's living in. Because there are document after document after document. There's testimony from multiple business partners. I mean, the list of evidence goes on and on. But in this most recent one, what was interesting is it was written before the Hunter Biden laptop was made known. And it was written by somebody who worked for one of the banks. And he wrote it because the activity that he was witnessing with Hunter Biden's bank accounts looked like money laundering.
Oh. Uh-oh.
And so he wrote a whole thing about it, and now that has finally come out. So, it's just more evidence on top of the ever-growing pile.
Yeah.
That's getting higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
To show that what was really going on. was that Hunter Biden was taking money from foreign governments in exchange for access to his father, Joe Biden, who was then vice president.
Yeah.
And now president. So...
yeah, that's a good one, because this just seems to be like an ongoing reality series with the Biden crime family, as it's so often referred to. But, and one of the things I brought up, Kev, was that for sure we understand that certain amounts of evidence can be forged or fraudulent. And at some point, though, when it's mounting to a great degree, I mean, we could find other examples where that's, not the case, like all the Trump indictments. That's kind of a ridiculous...
Right, so that's a good point to bring up, because here are some things that I see that are different here. What I see is there's no mistake about it that the media is 100% on board with the Democrat agenda. So when you have this kind of evidence coming out, despite the fact that the media has done everything they can to suppress it, when you have all this evidence coming up, despite the fact that the FBI and the DOJ have refused to do anything about it and have stonewalled us and hidden a lot of the evidence. And
red flag.
And yet it still keeps coming and still keeps mounting despite all the resistance against it.
Yeah.
That to me is really a sign that there is something here, because all the powerful forces are trying everything they can to crush this, and yet more evidence just keeps coming out.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the Trump indictments. Well, especially, I don't have enough data on the current indictments, but if we go back to things that we do know, things like the Russia collusion and the PP tape hoax and the quid pro quo hoax and all that kind of stuff, there you see a very different and opposite situation, where you had the FBI and the CIA and the DOJ and the Congress and the media and everybody just going on and on and on and on and on about all this stuff that happened. But it's, especially in the case of the Russia probe, 3 years and $100 million later, and nothing. All they came up with was, a couple of Russian guys bought some Facebook ads for an amount of money that was so low it couldn't possibly have had an influence. Right? Most of those ads never even actually aired anyway.
Yeah.
So, you can really see the disparity between those two situations.
That's good examples, yeah.
I'd be more inclined to say this is probably not true if the media was pushing it 24/7.
Right.
If the media was all day long saying all this stuff, and if the FBI was breaking all their rules and the DOJ was breaking their rules in order to make this happen, I'd say the evidence is probably lacking and they're just trying to make something happen.
Right.
But seeing as how they're doing the exact opposite of that, it makes me feel that the evidence is actually real. And of course, the FBI has admitted the Hunter Biden laptop is real. So that's a pretty good indication that what's going on here is actually, it's actually happening. All the accusations that were made.
And final little tidbit I want to add is just, I'm sure many of you already are aware, but people's information, especially through social media, can be so biased for that particular audience. So a lot of people who are left or right leaning will hear a majority of their side's
hopefully you've seen The Social Dilemma. If you haven't seen it, that explains how the algorithms are deliberately designed to create echo chambers where you only get to see the stuff that you agree with and the stuff that you like and the stuff that you look for, which is very dangerous because it prevents you from seeing other points of view, which even if they're incorrect, are still important to be aware of, that there are multiple points of view. Yeah,
and I believe that's still up on Netflix, and that's one of the documentaries I'm actually kind of surprised has stood the test of time there, if it's still around.
Yeah, it was pretty decent. I don't think it went as far as it could have gone.
But it was a good introduction to for a lot of people.
All right, next
what do you got?
On the list, the Gavin Newsom and Ron Desantis debate. Now, I was telling a friend about this the other day. I said, man, you wouldn't believe some of the things that happened in the Newsom-DeSantis debate. And do you know what their response was? Why is Gavin Newsom debating Ron DeSantis when he's not running for president? There's your answer right there. So it seems a little weird. Why do we have this debate when DeSantis is running
Yeah.
for the Republicans, but hasn't gotten the nomination yet. And now he's debating somebody from the other party. That's the first thing, right?
Yeah.
Usually you debate amongst your own party until you get the nomination. Then you debate the other party. So he's debating somebody from the other party. And it just so happens that that person in the other party isn't technically running for president.
Yeah, so wild. I mean, this is right after we just saw Newsom meet with the Chinese dictator.
Right.
So that was, a great framing of here's somebody who really is a world leader.
We're gonna talk about that little meeting in a moment. But so, on this show, we're always trying to bring up stories and help you kind of see through the story, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought that my friend's question was a very valid question because most people would not understand why that was happening.
Right.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Well, it is because Gavin Newsom is very likely going to be the Democratic nominee for president in 2024. So make no mistake.
Yikes. Scary stuff.
Gavin Newsom has been spending his entire life maneuvering to become president. He has said his entire goal is to become president, right? Mm-hmm. We also know that he is the nephew of Nancy Pelosi. Mm-hmm. So he's entrenched in that old school political class. And we also know that Joe Biden is dead. He is absolutely dead when it comes to running for re-election. Like, everybody knows it. The Democratic Party knows it. Everybody knows this guy is a loser and he's a losing ticket, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to have to replace him with somebody. I don't think it will be Hillary Clinton. She's too polarizing. Mm-hmm. I don't think it will be Michelle Obama because they have not positioned her in any sort of lower level political position to give her the experience like they did with Hillary Clinton when they wanted her to run.
Right.
Remember, Hillary Clinton basically did nothing political other than be the first lady until after Bill Clinton was in office. Then they installed her as a senator in New York, and then they installed her as the Secretary of State. So they were doing that to groom her for running for president. So I don't think it's going to be one of those two candidates. Mm-hmm. The next person in line, the next most likely person is Gavin Newsom. Mm-hmm. He's a rising star in the Democrat Party. Mm-hmm. He's tall, good looking, slick back hair. He's got the image. He's a smooth talker. He's very similar to Obama in that respect. Mm-hmm. However, Gavin Newsom has something that Obama didn't have.
Dyslexia?
Well, probably a bunch.
Apparently, he can't write.
Things.
He's like unable to read or write.
No, what he has is the absolutely dismal record of California under his leadership.
Oh, well,
that's what he has. So
come on.
So he's going to have a tough time, and I'm saying that to bring it kind of back around to the Ron DeSantis Newsom debate, because most of the people that I listened to who were doing analysis of this debate said they felt that Ron DeSantis won pretty strongly, despite Newsom being a very good talker. Yeah. But I think probably one of the best parts of that entire debate was when Ron DeSantis pulled out the shit map. This is not a joke.
Oh my God!
There is an app that people use in San Francisco. It's kind of like Waze. You've used Waze, right? And you can tell them where the traffic is and where the radar speed stops and the accidents. You can report all that, and it maps it for people so they know. They have an app that maps where the human feces are throughout the city.
Wow.
Ron DeSantis brought a blow up of a screenshot from the app, and he basically said, look at how many plots on this map there are. Every single one of those is a place where there is human feces on the street.
Wow.
He was using that to illustrate the absolute disaster that California has been. We here on this show are based in California, and we can tell you firsthand what a disaster this state is in. Yeah. So, Democrat, Republican, I don't care. If you're watching this and you're thinking in any way that Newsom might be a good candidate, get that out of your mind right now. If you want to see the entire country crash and burn the way California is crashing and burning, great, then vote for him. But if you want something better than that, do not let this guy get anywhere near the White House. And the whole point of this story is, again, why is Newsom debating Desantis?
Yeah.
Because they want to position him for president.
They are doing it.
Now, most likely what's going to happen is they're going to wait to the very, 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 very last minute and then swap candidates. Why do they do that? Because if Newsom enters the race now, they're going to have basically 10 months to dig into him, to plaster all over the media his disastrous record here in California. They're going to have a lot of time to attack him, and they have a lot that they can attack him with. So if they wait until the very last minute, they will avoid a lot of that. And that's often their tactic. They do these last minute swaps in candidates so that you don't have enough time to reach the people with the message of what this person's record actually is.
Especially with enough other distractions going on in the media and or who knows what else. But let's just hope we have an election next year. I mean, that's somewhat of a concern in my mind if they try and really sideline everything due to who knows whatever new fabricated World War.
I don't think they'll do that. What I see happening currently is, and actually this is a story that is not on the list, but we should add it to the list, which is the pneumonia, the mysterious pneumonia that's been going around in China and also going around now. We're hearing reports in Europe, and we're also starting to hear some reports here in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's a bacterial pneumonia. And amazing. It's happening just in time for election season.
Yeah.
We haven't had a pandemic since the last major election, so it's time, right? What I see happening is they're probably going to do the same thing, which is whip up a bunch of hysteria, try to force masking, social distancing, and mail-in voting. The World Health Organization, is already calling for masking and social distancing. So they're probably going to try to do that. I just got in the mail the other day something here where we live about how you should go register and mail your vote in. The entire thing was all about, and they do this every election season.
Oh my gosh.
Mail-in voting is a disaster.
Yeah.
And everybody knows it. And you can go watch videos of Democrats talking about this back in 2016 because they were afraid that Republicans were going to use this to cheat. And they were all over the place talking about how we can't have mail-in ballots. Fast forward 4 years and it's all about stay home and mail your ballot in. There's no need to actually show up to the polls. Mail-in ballots are the safest election in history. Yeah. It's all complete bullshit.
Yeah.
That's what I see happening. So I don't think they will cancel the election.
Yeah.
I think that they will do everything they can to force people to mail in ballot.
Yeah.
And then cheat the fuck out of it like they do every time.
Yeah. And apparently 60,000 immigrants in Chicago are getting driver's licenses who just got ushered into the country. So
California's been giving illegal driver's licenses for years.
Yeah.
You know why? First of all, if you're in this country illegal, how do you show up to a government agency and not immediately get arrested and deported?
Right.
How does that not happen? That's what should happen.
Yeah.
And then not only that, they give you an ID.
Yeah.
You're here illegally. How do you get a legal ID if you're here illegally?
Well, they don't want to discriminate. Come
on.
The
reason why they do that is because it's one step closer to getting them to vote. That's why they do it.
Yeah. It's pretty sad. So, the mantra is in person, ID required, voting. I mean,
if you want to talk about how to fix the voting system.
So let's go over a few things.
Here's a quick few things that need to be done to fix voting.
So it's in person. Same day.
Same day, single day. That's it. You cast votes on one day, in person, paper ballots only, no machines whatsoever.
And counting is done within 24 hours, I think, right? It's not, you can't push it out a week and
no mail-in ballots.
Find a bunch of new votes.
So if you did just those things alone, you would significantly increase the security and reliability.
And no machines,
No machines, no mail-in ballots.
All right, thank you for that.
Okay, next one on the list.
Booyah.
Derrick Chauvan.
Oh, man.
The police officer accused of killing George Floyd.
Or crisis actor.
Maybe, possibly.
I think so.
Well, we don't know that for sure. But
it was all pretty.
For now, we'll stick to the facts. And so far, the facts show us that he was a police officer, that he did apprehend and arrest George Floyd. And George Floyd did die. However, the evidence seems to suggest that George Floyd actually died from a drug overdose. Now, we know he was on a ridiculously large amount of drugs. We know that he was resisting arrest. I'm not here to debate whether or not Derrick Chauvan is innocent or guilty. I will just put out there that it's not as simple as the media has reported, and there is significant evidence suggesting that George Floyd did not die from asphyxiation from having Derrick Chauvin's knee on his neck. Be that as it may, Derrick Chauvan, who has been in prison, he was convicted, he's been in prison, was stabbed 20 or 22 times, I forget exactly. He did manage to survive. The person who is accused, well, not really accused, they caught him in the act. The person who did this said that he would have killed him had the officers not responded so quickly, and also said that he did this, he attempted to kill Derrick Chauvan because of his affiliation with Black Lives Matter. So not because of Derrick's affiliation, but because of this person's affiliation, meaning that because he, in some way, I don't know if it was officially, unofficially, or what, felt that because of the Black Lives Matter movement that he needed to do this for that movement.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So he was bringing justice for the black people, for us white privileged folk.
Yeah, so that seems to be basically what he feels he's bringing justice. Now,
that's great. We don't like. I'm sure that's like buzzing really good on the certain liberal media channels.
Well, maybe, but the point here is this: when you hear that Black Lives Matter is an organization that is peaceful. Well, look, we all watched the riots. We watched the cities get burned down, right?
Yeah.
And now here we have somebody else saying that they committed a brutal, violent act against somebody else in the name of BLM. So, again, it's just about don't believe what they're telling you. Look at the facts that are actually happening. Now, I will admit that Black Lives Matter may have nothing to do with this whatsoever, and they may know nothing about it. And he's just saying that, he believes in it and that's why he did it.
Right.
That's totally valid.
Yeah.
But another theory that people have that is circulating out on the internet is also that Black Lives Matter was potentially, maybe, possibly communicating with people inside the prison system to have this happen. Oh, yeah. I can't say that that's true or not.
It's totally possible, though.
But it's possible.
Yeah.
Our main point here is... when they're telling you that, it's all peaceful and it's this and it's that, it's not really. I mean, we know that the founders of Black Lives Matter, bought, 4 or 5 mansions with the money that was donated. We know that when, during BLM, that when you would go to certain Black Lives Matter pages and click the donate button, it would take you straight to the Democratic National Party, right?
Act Blue. Too.
Yeah. So, just again, it's about exposing the lies and getting you to see through it. And that's the main point of this particular story. Mm-hmm. And, even if Derrick is guilty and he did do what he did, he also doesn't deserve to be murdered in prison for it either. So,
well, that's my kind of outside uneducated opinion about this whole thing, is that if he was a crisis actor and he is getting burned in a way that he didn't expect, he may have thought he was going to get off, and then they knew he was going to maybe say too much or come out, then they were going to try
that is a possibility.
Try and wipe him from the earth.
So what you're suggesting is they basically Jeffrey Epsteined him, right?
Yeah.
That's a possibility. I don't know that that's
my
true.
Little theory over here on the side. But it's just like still brutal. Like jail's not a pretty place, and that sounds like a really. I didn't realize he had been stabbed that many times. That's pretty harsh.
Yep. Well, that's
amazing. He survived.
In stabbings, most of the time, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So because you just go going like this until the person drops, and it takes a little while for them to drop because they have to bleed out enough for their blood pressure to drop low enough, and then they pass out and hit the ground. They may or may not be dead yet, but that's why people tend to get stabbed a whole bunch of times before they actually fall. Because if it was, when you get shot many times, it depends on the caliber, depends on you, depends on a lot of things, but most of the time you get shot, you go down.
Yeah.
Not so with a knife. You can get stabbed over and over again.
And was it like some eating utensil or something he was using?
All they said in the report was an improvised knife.
All right. From the wood shop. Okay.
Well, yeah, who knows what that means.
All right.
Okay.
What do we got next?
We got 2 more stories.
All right.
This one I just love because this is something that we have been talking about for, well over a decade now. And it's just more evidence, again, to help blow up the official narrative. Mm-hmm. But here we go. As reported by the EPA, the EPA put out a map on their own website.
Wow.
And this map showed that only 19% of all weather stations reported an increase in the number of hot days since 1948. So we're going back a long ways here. So a total of 863 stations, or 81%, reported either a decrease or no change at all in the number of hot days.
Come on.
Now, we all know that global warming is BS.
Yeah.
And we've known this for a long time.
Oh, but some people...
But they are still trying to force all of these new laws and new rules and take away more of our freedoms and liberties.
It's kind of shifted to climate change now,
under the guise of climate change. But so they called it global warming.
Yeah.
However, in the 90s, the temperature stopped rising, and so then they switched over to
carbon, global warming.
It was global warming, and then it was climate change.
Right.
Thank you.
So,
yeah. But when they say climate change, what they really mean is warming. Yeah. Because what do they always talk about? They talk about the lowering of sea ice, right? The raising of sea levels. They talk about how many hot days we've had. They're using climate change, but what they really mean is global warming.
Right.
The problem is, even the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, whose job it is to know this stuff, is reporting that 81% of their stations show there's no increase in temperature.
Yeah.
So that blows up the whole narrative.
That is wild. Yeah, I mean, because we do see more erratic weather, faster changes. I do believe in a weaponization of the weather that's taking place. And so that kind of ties in here, honestly, to some degree, given that, the climate change crisis is certainly still being used to control certain narratives and agendas through fear, but this global warming thing is pretty funny. And thinking back about the Inconvenient Truth documentary that came out, and just what an impact that made on me personally. I was really caught up in it at the time.
I believed it at the time too, until I realized that he cherry-picked the data and only showed us a very small portion of the actual overall graph. And when you saw the data in its full context, it didn't say the same thing as what he actually said that it said. So yeah, that was a big red flag there. But climate change is kind of the same as terrorism. Right. It's like this vague thing that could mean anything.
Right.
So therefore, you can just basically use it in like you could just use it forever.
Yeah.
You could just keep saying climate change. Well, yeah, the climate is changing. It's always changing. Doesn't necessarily mean it's our fault, but it's changing. It also doesn't mean it's getting warmer. So a lot of the things they're telling us that we need to do to cool the earth wouldn't actually have to be done if the truth were put out there. So it's just another scam. It has always been a scam.
Yeah.
Always will be a scam. I mean, when you look back at the 70s when they were pumping the fear about the next ice age and global cooling, Then you look at the pumping, the global warming.
Yeah.
You know, they've been telling us for decades that we only have 12 years left, but we're like 30 years into the 12 years left.
Yeah.
And they keep using, we only got 12 years left.
Yeah. And
it's
this
just like,
goes back to the early 1900s.
They
had propaganda back in the early 1900s, at least, maybe even before that was talking about crazy weather events and crisis, which, you know, certainly the weather does change and there are some crazy one-offs and whatever, but right now, after seeing what we have, you know, in certain crises like in Maui and Acapulco, it's definitely
we're actually seeing increases in sea ice. I know last year here in San Diego, we had an unprecedentedly cold and long winter. Snow areas that got snow got
we're in like a mini ice age phase. You
snow.
said, right? Is it a mini ice age?
Yeah. So
like we're kind of going into one.
So what some scientists are saying is that we are actually in a mini ice age, which means we are seeing basically a decrease in temperatures. Mm-hmm. We're not going to all be submerged in ice, but that's why it's a mini ice age. But in other words, temperatures are going down, not going up.
Yeah, it feels like it around here.
It sure does.
And the last thing I want to add is that NASA apparently has, and I don't know how valid of a report this was, but I saw that they were recently predicting a 100-year drought that we're going into. So, yeah, let's just hope that's not true. But another way in which they're kind of feeding a bunch of
this year, all the reports I have seen are showing that we're going to have another long, cold, wet winter like we had last year.
Good. Lots of snow, I hope.
Yeah. Supposedly, but we'll see. Aside from official reports, the Farmer's Almanac is actually calling for that this year. Another winter like we had last year. Yeah. So, all right. Okay. Last story here. Boom. The UN has officially launched their interoperable digital public infrastructure.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so the UN is basically launching this initiative where they want to make, under the guise of making improvements and giving everybody access to the internet, and blah, 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 and you will own nothing and be happy. Oh, no, sorry, that was the WHO.
Yeah. You have nothing to hide and you can't be trusted.
Really, most likely what this is just a front for having more control over the internet. So, if the UN or the World Economic Forum or the WHO is telling you they're going to do something to make the world better, what it means is better for them.
Yeah.
What it means is more control for them.
Yeah.
Now, we'll have to wait and see how this plays out because we don't know yet. But I just, I wanted to throw this in here. This is a story you actually brought to the list. And I wanted to make sure that we covered it because I want people to be aware when you see these stories come up, when you see them talking about, making changes to the infrastructure and how it's going to be great. Don't take it at face value. Read deeper into it and figure out what it is they're actually trying to do because most likely it's not going to be good for you and your freedom.
No, this is one step closer to a social credit score, which sounds actually quite innocent and valid, and wow, wouldn't it be great to know who's doing well and who's doing good and who the criminals are, but it's not going to be used for good intentions. It will be used to literally keep you in line with whatever the government narrative is, and they're moving towards a one world government, so you can just imagine that's not going to be any sort of constitutional based system. So this is definitely a scary trend that's a long-term plan and a very massive, orchestrated ploy and agenda. So yeah, keep your eyes and your ears.
They'll tell you it's under the guise of making the internet safer.
Right.
Yeah, safer for their propaganda.
Yeah.
Then they tell you that you're going to need to register with your digital ID to get on the internet. That just means we're going to track everything that you do, and then we're going to control you through it.
Yeah.
We're going to threaten you through it. We're going to withhold services if you say certain things, do certain things, go to certain websites. It is the end of freedom.
Definitely. So that is a big one. Thanks for covering it all. And thank you all for joining us. We definitely would love to hear your comments, thoughts, suggestions, and just stimulate this conversation with anyone who's open and ready to think critically and just really be on our toes as we continue to ride the waves of this interesting three-dimensional existence we have on planet Earth. So thank you so much for tuning in. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Stay free, stay healthy, and God bless.